Sometimes when we see how God worked with animals in the Old Testament scriptures, we have to notice his majesty and his glory that shines through it. Good morning, this is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Thursday. When Elisha, the prophet of God, had been giving strategic battle information to his own king, the opposing king of Syria got angry about it. As a matter of fact, he sent his army full of horses and chariots to come after Elisha. And when the enemy arrived in Dothan to deal with Elisha, his servant was just going out to begin his new day, and he saw the enemy with these horses and chariots. In his great fear, he ran to warn Elisha of their danger at the hand of the Syrians. Of course, Elisha had great faith in God, and he knew he would be protected as God's servant. So in the servant's anguish and fear, he asked Elisha, "Alas, master, what shall we do?" So, knowing God's protection, Elisha sought to calm the servant's nerves. In 2 Kings chapter 6 and verse 16, he prayed, and it says, "So he answered, 'Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them.' And Elisha prayed and said, 'Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see.' Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha." You see, God was there all the time. And instead of Elisha being surrounded by the enemy, the Syrian army was actually surrounded by the majestic forces of the Almighty God. Elisha says, don't fear. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. You know, it's like the New Testament writer says, if God be for us, who can be against us? And the majesty and the power that God displays here has helped this frightened servant boy. I can see those massive horses around the edges of the mountains surrounding where they were in Dothan. And to make this picture even more commanding, these horses are pulling chariots, the most powerful weapon in that day, and they're blazing with fire. Now, I'm sure the Syrian army cannot see this display of God's power and his authority, but Elisha and his servant certainly know about it. Because in the midst of this man's fear of the enemy, and perhaps his lack of faith in God, for that matter, he is trembling and fears for their lives. But God opens his eyes to show that he's more powerful than any enemy that we face. Elisha already knew God's power, knew that he could deliver them in the midst of some fearful circumstances. So what do we focus on today whenever we face tough times, fearful times ahead of us? Are we going to see the Almighty God who has that enemy surrounded with his majesty and his power and his might, just like those horses and those chariots of fire? Or are we going to be focusing on the enemy?